Here we are again. We're at chapter 15 of the Screwtape letters. In chapter 15, Screwtape starts off saying that the war, in this case, the Great War, seems to have lulled, in which Screwtape scoffs at what they call a war. So obviously the demons have a greater idea of what a real war is like. And of course they would. They're at the eternal war with God. And but it's interesting. He leads into that in the idea of how man thinks of things. So there's basically two ways. Um, there's three places where we live. We can either live in the past, present, or future. And he says that God would rather be concerned with eternity or with the present, and by being in the present, we're mindful of our union, our eternal union with or without God, and so therefore we're being present with God in the moment. Whereas what the demons want us to do, the devil wants us to do, is live in the past, and that's living in the past of our own mistakes, past our history, past not thinking forward or living the present. Now, he also says, the thinking of the future is not a thing like eternity, and it's interesting. So how he talks about it, he goes on for a little bit after that to talk about some other notes in a little more detail about the future. But ultimately, the note I got out of this is that that the demons want a man worried. And we know in Matthew 6, Jesus talks about how worry is a problem. Worry doesn't add a day to our lives. God wants us thinking about eternity, but eternity in terms of our relationship to Him, not in how we get there, not in what it's going to be like, but in what our relationship is. And in order to get to eternity and eternal relationship with God, we have to be there in the present moment. So in a sense, thinking to our eternity in the future, or eternity with God, requires us to be present with God in the moment. So but whereas future, we're looking at what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen a year from now, and we start looking at the good and the bad. We have the hopeful and the negative parts of it. We're haunted by, what could happen if things go bad. You get the pessimists that are out there like, nothing's good going to come from, what's going to happen today. It's all going to be bad, bad, bad. And then they get the people who are worried about it's all going to be good, but then they get worried when the signs don't lead towards it. And so rather than being in the moment, listening to God in the moment, and then focusing on our eternity through our relationship with God, the demons want us worrying about the future. The past, they can get us to live there, but we often are not held there for long. Screwtape says that we see through that. Because we know it. We've lived it. We know what past was. We know we can't do anything about it. It's just there. It doesn't, and ultimately we don't let it define us. But we worry about the future. We worry about, am I going to have a job next week or next year? The economy's turning. Am I going to have a job? We worry about that. Worry. And Jesus warned us, don't worry. And guess what God wants us to do? Don't worry. He's got us. Worry about what we're doing at the moment, because nothing we can do worrying about the future is going to change anything. And it's not to say we're not going to plan. We're not. He says we're not. He says if we want to think about the future too, much as it is necessary for now planning the acts of justice, charity, which will probably be their duty tomorrow. So it's thinking about how am I going to serve tomorrow? How am I going to help somebody tomorrow? It's not in the event of what am I worrying about is going to happen. It's what can I do to prepare for tomorrow, to do something tomorrow? So it's not to say, just wake up tomorrow, when to go to bed tonight with no plan of how we're going to go tomorrow. If I didn't check my gas gauge and I said, not worry about it, I'll deal with it tomorrow, and I wake up and it's tank's empty, it's bad planning. But if I plan and said, oh, it looks like I need gas before I go to bed, and so I can have gas in the morning to get to work, that's proper planning. That's not worrying. That's just saying, here's a fact. I need to do something about it. So tomorrow I'm not dealing with the consequences of it. But worrying about stuff we can't control, world events, things that just we can't do, earthquakes and things that are completely out of our control, godly events. those things really take it away from us. And so, um, however, and then we have the idea that we can um, work with, live with the hope, and and sometimes if you focus on too much on what's been good, tranquility, tranquility can do harm too. Is we think that hope for a good. When we hope for good, we think things are going to be good, and then they don't, and we get disappointed, and then we have false hopes, and that can be harmful too. Instead of worrying about what's happening at the moment. So, and I like the last statement, and it said the phenomenon would then be merely neutral, natural, all the same. I should break it up if I were you. No natural phenomenon is really in our favor in any way. Why should the creatures be happy? So even if we're tranquil and there's no bad things happening, the demons are like, well, why should they be happy anyways? They don't deserve to be happy. Um, so they're going to do what they can to make our miserable. But in general, it's the chapter is more about focusing on the moment, our time with God, reflecting on what it means in that relationship, and through that we will find eternity in heaven through that present relationship. Worrying about what's going to happen in the future doesn't get us there any closer, nor does it add any. If in fact, I think scientifically they found that worrying takes time off of our lives rather than adding to it. So, um, either case, don't worry. It's healthier for you not to worry. So, we'll see you again at chapter 16. Have a good day.